I never thought my life would shatter on a Tuesday. 8 years, that's how long I believed in the fairy tale Jessica and I had built together. 8 years of thinking I'd married my soulmate, my partner, the woman who'd stand by me through anything. I'm Mark, 35 years old, and I've spent the better part of a decade working construction management, pulling 12-hour days in the Arizona heat, building office complexes and shopping centers so my wife could have the life she deserved. Jessica is 33, beautiful in that effortless way that turns heads in grocery stores. She works part-time at a marketing firm downtown, or at least that's what I thought she was doing with her days. We never had kids. "I'm not ready," she'd say whenever I brought it up. "Maybe next year." Next year became the year after, then the year after that. I stopped asking. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The distance that crept between us like morning fog. The way she'd turn her phone face down during dinner. How she'd suddenly developed a passion for yoga classes that ran late into the evening. The cold shoulder I'd get when I reached for her at night, her body turning away from mine like I was a stranger. But I was working so much, I told myself it was normal. Marriages go through phases. People get busy. I was building us a future while she was apparently building something else entirely. That Tuesday, a monsoon rolled through Phoenix earlier than expected, turning the job site into a muddy mess. My foreman sent everyone home by 3 o'clock. I should have called Jessica to let her know I'd be early, but I wanted to surprise her. Maybe we could grab dinner somewhere nice, talk like we used to. The house was quiet when I walked in. Jessica's silver Honda was in the driveway, so I knew she was home. I called out but got no answer. The kitchen was pristine except for her laptop sitting open on the granite counter, something she never left unattended. That's when I saw it. A message notification had popped up on the screen. The sender was listed simply as D with a red heart emoji. My stomach dropped before I even read the preview. "Can't wait for Saturday, your place or mine." My hands trembled as I touched the trackpad. The laptop wasn't locked. The message thread opened and my world imploded. Months of conversations. Months of flirtation, explicit photos, detailed plans about when I'd be at work. This wasn't some emotional affair or recent mistake. This was calculated, ongoing, systematic betrayal. She'd been living a double life while I was breaking my back to provide for ours. The photos made me sick. Jessica in lingerie I'd never seen, poses she'd never done for me, words of passion she'd never spoken in our bedroom. The man, this D, was sending equally graphic content back. They talked about hotels, about weekend getaways, about how clueless I was. One message from Jessica particularly burned itself into my memory. "Mark works late every day. He has no idea. We could do this forever." I heard the garage door opening. Jessica was coming home. I closed the laptop and walked to the living room, my mind racing. Should I confront her, pretend I hadn't seen anything, pack my bags and leave? My chest felt tight, like I was drowning in our own home. The front door opened, and Jessica walked in carrying Whole Foods bags, humming some song I didn't recognize. She looked radiant, glowing in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. "You're home early," she said, not meeting my eyes as she headed to the kitchen. "Job site got rained out," I replied, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "Oh, well, I picked up stuff for dinner, salmon and—" she started. "I saw the messages, Jessica," I interrupted. The humming stopped. The grocery bags hit the counter with a soft thud. She turned around slowly, and I expected to see guilt, shame, maybe tears of remorse. Instead, her face hardened into something I'd never seen before, something cold and calculating. "So," she said, crossing her arms, "you found out. What are you going to do about it?" What? I stared at my wife, this woman I thought I knew, as she stood in our kitchen with the casual confidence of someone discussing the weather. "So," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper, "that's all you have to say." Jessica leaned against the counter, studying her manicured nails. "Mark, let's be realistic here," she replied coolly. "You want to have a meltdown about this? Go ahead, but let me save you some time and explain how this is going to work." The clinical way she spoke sent chills down my spine. This wasn't the panicked confession of someone caught in the act. This was a prepared speech. "If you try to divorce me," she continued, her voice steady and matter-of-fact, "you'll lose half of everything. This house, your savings, your precious truck sitting in the driveway. Arizona is a community property state, Mark. The laws favor me." She paused, letting that sink in. And since I only work part-time thanks to your insistence that I focus on our home, I'll be entitled to alimony. Probably for years. My mouth went dry. She'd clearly thought this through. While I was working overtime to build our life together, she was researching how to tear it apart. "If you try to fight it," Jessica went on, examining her reflection in the microwave door, "I'll drag you through court until you're broke. My lawyer, yes, I already have one, says these things can take years. Depositions, hearings, appeals. How much do you think that costs, Mark? More than you make in construction management, I guarantee you." I felt like I was watching someone else's life implode. "Jessica, we've been married for 8 years. How can you?" I started. "And if you even think about laying a hand on me or David," she interrupted, "you'll go to jail. I'll make sure of it. One bruise, Mark, one raised voice that I can get on recording. Then you'll lose everything and get to explain to your next employer why you have domestic violence charges on your background check." David, so that's what D stood for. She walked closer, her expression almost pitying. "I'm not trying to be cruel, Mark," she said with false sympathy. "I'm just being honest about the situation. You have 2 choices. You can accept that I'm going to see David, or you can leave. But either way, I'm not stopping." "Accept it?" I asked, the words feeling like poison in my mouth. "He's coming over Saturday night, every Saturday night," she announced matter-of-factly. "You can go to a movie, visit a friend, sleep in the guest room, I don't really care, but this is happening whether you like it or not." She reached into one of the grocery bags and pulled out a bottle of wine. "I picked up his favorite Cabernet. Hope you don't mind that I used our joint account." I stood there, paralyzed by the sheer audacity of it all. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or trying to work things out. She was informing me of my new reality like a landlord explaining lease terms. "Why?" I finally managed to ask. Jessica shrugged casually. "David makes me feel alive. You make me feel stable," she replied with brutal honesty. "Boring but stable, I need both." She uncorked the wine with practiced ease. "This way, everyone gets what they want. I get my excitement, you get to keep your precious routine, and David gets me without the messy complications of a divorce." She poured herself a glass and took a sip, watching me over the rim. "It's really quite practical when you think about it," she added with a satisfied smile. That night, I slept on the couch for the first time in our marriage. Jessica went to bed in our room, probably texting David about how well her revelation had gone. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, my mind churning with rage, humiliation, and something else I couldn't quite name yet. Something cold was forming in my chest, something that would change everything. The next few days passed like a fever dream. I went to work each morning, operated heavy machinery, supervised crews, made decisions that affected million-dollar projects, all while feeling like I was watching someone else live my life. Jessica acted as if nothing had changed. She made breakfast, asked about my day, even reminded me to pick up my dry cleaning. The normalcy was suffocating. She'd torn our marriage apart with surgical precision, then gone back to playing house like she'd simply rearranged the furniture. Friday evening, she brought it up again over dinner. "Tomorrow, Saturday," she said casually, cutting into her chicken like she was mentioning grocery shopping. "David will be here around 7. You should probably make plans." I set down my fork. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. 6 months, she answered without hesitation. "No shame, maybe 7. "And you think this is sustainable, that I'll just accept this forever?" I pressed. Jessica dabbed her mouth with her napkin. "Mark, you're a practical man," she replied matter-of-factly. "You've built your entire career on solving problems efficiently. Well, this is efficient. We avoid the financial devastation of divorce, I get my needs met, and you get to keep the life you've worked so hard to build." "What about what I need?" I asked quietly. "You need security, stability. The house, your job, your routine," she answered, gesturing around our dining room. "I'm not taking that away from you, I'm just adding something to my life." Saturday arrived with crystal-clear skies and the kind of heat that makes Phoenix feel like the surface of Mars. I worked in the garage most of the day, organizing tools, anything to avoid thinking about what was coming. Around 6:30, Jessica emerged from the house looking stunning in a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. "I ordered pizza for you," she said, her tone almost maternal. "It'll be here in an hour. You can eat in the living room, watch TV, whatever you want, just not upstairs." I watched her apply lipstick in the hallway mirror. "Jessica, this is insane. You realize that, right?" I said. She turned to me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been regret flicker across her face. But it vanished quickly. "Mark David makes me feel like I did when we were dating," she replied softly. "Remember that? The excitement, the passion, the way I used to look at you?" Her voice took on a wistful quality. "I loved that feeling. I miss it." "So did I answered quietly. "Then you understand," she said with finality. She checked her watch. "He'll be here soon." I couldn't stay. I grabbed my wallet and keys and left, driving aimlessly through Phoenix's east side while my wife prepared to betray our marriage in our own bedroom. I thought about calling my brother in Colorado, my few close friends, anyone who might help me process this nightmare. But what would I say? That my wife was cheating and had basically dared me to do something about it. I ended up at O'Reilly's Pub, a dive bar near the construction site where I sometimes grabbed beers with my crew. The place was nearly empty on Saturday night. Just me, the bartender, and an old man in a worn leather jacket nursing a Budweiser at the far end of the bar. I ordered whiskey and tried to make sense of my life. Jessica was right about the legal realities. I'd consulted with a lawyer on my lunch break Friday, and everything she'd said checked out. Arizona divorce law would indeed split our assets down the middle. Her part-time income would likely qualify her for alimony. Fighting it would cost me more than I could afford, and winning was far from guaranteed. "Rough night?" the old man asked, his voice cutting through my thoughts. I looked up. The old man had moved to the stool next to mine. Up close, he looked familiar, though I couldn't place him immediately. "You could say that," I muttered in response. He studied my face for a moment, then his eyes widened slightly. Mark Sullivan?" he asked with recognition. I looked at him more carefully. The weathered face, the gray beard, the calloused hands wrapped around his beer bottle. "Jake," I said, recognition finally clicking. "Jake Thompson." My father's best friend nodded slowly. "I'll be damned," he replied. "What?" "Jake Thompson. I hadn't seen him since my father's funeral 5 years ago, and even then he disappeared before I could talk to him properly. Dad used to tell stories about their time together. Military service, construction work, adventures that always seemed to end with Jake pulling Dad out of some kind of trouble. "Jesus, kid, you look like hell," Jake said, signaling the bartender for another round. "What's eating at you?" I hesitated. Jake had been Dad's closest friend, but I barely knew the man. Still, something about his presence, steady, unshakable, made me feel like I could trust him, or maybe it was the whiskey. "Marriage problems," I said finally. Jake nodded knowingly. "Been there," he replied with understanding. "Want to talk about it?" And suddenly I did. Everything poured out. Jessica's affair, her cold calculation, the way she'd legally cornered me, tonight's humiliation. Jake listened without interruption, his weathered face showing no judgment, just patient attention. When I finished, the bar felt quieter somehow. Jake stared into his beer for a long moment. "Your father ever tell you about a time we got pinned down in Kandahar?" he asked suddenly. "No," I answered, confused by the change in topic. "Taliban had us surrounded. 3 days, no supplies, no backup coming. We were doomed, basically," Jake continued, his voice steady and matter-of-fact. "But your dad, he had this saying, every problem has a solution. Sometimes the solution just isn't what you expect." He looked at me directly. "How certain are you that this David character will be at your house Wednesday night? Jessica mention any schedule changes?" he asked pointedly. The question caught me off guard. "Wednesday, she said she's switching it up, not just Saturdays anymore," I replied. "Why?" Jake finished his beer and stood up. "Work late Wednesday, stay at the job site until at least 10, he instructed firmly. "Make sure people see you there, remember you being there." He pulled on his jacket. "And after tonight, kid, we never had this conversation." "Jake, what are you?" I started. "Your father saved my life more than once. I owe him," he interrupted, his eyes cold now, distant. "Trust me." He walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Oh, and Mark," he added, "might want to think about taking a vacation next week. Somewhere with good cell phone records, credit card receipts, you know, the kind of paper trail that proves you were nowhere near Phoenix." Then he was gone, disappearing into the night like a ghost. I sat there for another hour, Jake's words echoing in my head. What was he planning? Should I try to find him, stop whatever he was thinking? But a part of me, the part that had been humiliated and trapped for days, didn't want to stop anything. When I finally drove home around midnight, Jessica's Honda was the only car in the driveway. The house was dark except for the master bedroom. I slept on the couch again, listening to the air conditioning cycle on and off, trying not to think about what had happened upstairs. Sunday morning, Jessica was making pancakes when I woke up. She seemed refreshed, almost glowing. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "Coffee's ready." I poured myself a cup, studying her face. "How was your evening?" I asked casually. "Lovely, thank you," she replied without shame or awkwardness. "David's taking me to Scottsdale Wednesday night, some new restaurant he wants to try." My stomach tightened. Wednesday, just like Jake had asked about. "I'll probably work late anyway," I heard myself say. "Big project deadline coming up." "Perfect," she responded with satisfaction. "It works out better for everyone when we have our space." That Monday, I called my brother in Denver. We'd been talking about me visiting for months, and suddenly I felt an urgent need to see him. We made plans for the following week, Thursday through Sunday. A nice long weekend that would require plane tickets, hotel receipts, and plenty of witnesses to prove I was out of state. Tuesday dragged by like molasses. I couldn't concentrate at work, kept checking my phone for messages from Jake. But there were none. I'd begun to wonder if the entire conversation had been some alcohol-induced hallucination. Wednesday morning, Jessica was humming in the shower. She'd laid out a black dress I'd never seen before, expensive-looking lingerie still with tags attached. Through the bathroom door, I could hear her on the phone. "7:30 works perfectly," she was saying. "Mark will be gone until late." I left for work with a sick feeling in my stomach and Jake's words ringing in my ears. Every problem has a solution. Sometimes the solution just isn't what you expect. Wednesday crawled by with agonizing slowness. I threw myself into work with unusual intensity, volunteering for overtime, helping with equipment maintenance, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. My foreman, Rodriguez, commented that I seemed unusually focused. "Just trying to stay ahead of the deadline," I told him, which wasn't entirely a lie. Around 6, I texted Jessica, "Working late tonight, don't wait up." She responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji. No curiosity about when I'd be home, no complaint about my absence. She was probably relieved. By 8 o'clock, most of the crew had gone home, but I stayed behind with Rodriguez and 2 others, organizing materials for Thursday's concrete pour. I made sure to have conversations, to be seen, to be remembered. If anyone ever asked where Mark Sullivan was on Wednesday night, there would be witnesses. At 9:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Don't go home tonight," Jake's voice came through, barely above a whisper. "Stay exactly where you are until I call you back." The line went dead before I could respond. My hands were shaking as I put the phone back in my pocket. Rodriguez noticed my expression. "Everything okay, Mark?" he asked with concern. "Yeah," I managed to say. "Just family stuff." We worked until 10:15. I helped load the last of the equipment, locked up the site office, and sat in my truck in the empty parking lot, waiting. The desert night was clear and cool, stars visible despite the city lights. I tried not to think about what might be happening at my house. At 10:47, my phone rang again. "It's done," Jake said simply. "Go home now, act surprised." "Jake, what did you—" I started to ask. But the line was already dead. The drive home took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. My street looked normal, quiet houses, porch lights, the occasional dog walker. But as I turned the corner onto my block, I saw them. Red and blue flashing lights painting the night in carnival colors. Police cars, an ambulance, crime scene tape. All in front of my house. I parked 2 houses down and walked toward the chaos on unsteady legs. A uniformed officer stopped me at the tape perimeter. "Sorry, sir, you can't," the officer began. "I live here," I interrupted, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "This is my house." The officer's expression changed immediately. He spoke into his radio, then looked back at me with that particular mix of professional sympathy and suspicion that cops develop. "What's your name, sir?" he asked. "Mark Sullivan, this is 1247 Saguaro Drive," I replied. What happened here?" "Detective Harris will need to speak with you," the officer said. "Can you wait right here?" I stood there watching my life become a crime scene. Neighbors had emerged from their houses, standing in clusters on their driveways, whispering and staring. Mrs. Gray from next door caught my eye and shook her head sadly. 5 minutes later, a woman in a dark suit approached me. Mid-40s, short gray hair, tired eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Detective Harris. We need to talk," she said with professional authority. She led me to an unmarked sedan parked across the street. We sat in the front seats while crime scene techs moved in and out of my house like ants. "Mr. Sullivan, I need to inform you that we found 2 deceased individuals inside your home tonight," she began carefully. "A woman and a man. Based on identification found at the scene, we believe one of them is your wife, Jessica." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd been expecting something, hearing it confirmed was different, final. "2 people?" I heard myself ask. "Yes," she confirmed. "We're still working to identify the male victim, but it appears both individuals were shot. We received a 911 call from a neighbor reporting gunshots around 9:15. 9:15. Jake had called me at 9:30. "I need to ask," Detective Harris continued, studying my face carefully, "where were you tonight between 8 and 10 p.m.? "At work," I answered automatically. "The construction site on Indian School Road, working late with my foreman and 2 other guys. We were there until after 10. She wrote that down. "We'll need to verify that," she said. "Do you own any firearms, Mr. Sullivan?" "No," I replied. "Have you recently had any conflicts with your wife?" she asked. I looked at her for a long moment, then decided on honesty. "We were having problems," I admitted. "She was seeing someone else." Detective Harris nodded knowingly. "We're going to need you to come to the station for a more detailed statement," she said. As we drove away, I saw Jake's words burned into the night sky. "Every problem has a solution." The police station at midnight felt like purgatory. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant, the weight of everything that had changed forever pressing down on my shoulders. Detective Harris led me to a small interview room where her partner, Detective Bowen, was waiting. He was younger than Harris, with the kind of aggressive energy that made me uncomfortable. They offered me coffee, which I accepted more for something to do with my hands than because I wanted it. "Let's start from the beginning," Harris said, setting up a recording device. "Tell us about your marriage." For the next 3 hours, I told them everything. The distance that had grown between Jessica and me, my discovery of the affair, her cold ultimatum, the humiliation of the past few days. I was brutally honest about my feelings, the rage, the helplessness, the desire for some kind of justice. "So you were angry," Bowen said, leaning forward. "Angry enough to do something about it." "Angry enough to want to," I corrected carefully. "But I didn't." Harris showed me photographs from the crime scene. Jessica and David, a man I'd never seen before but somehow looked exactly like I'd imagined, both shot in our bedroom. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. "The shooter was either let in or had a key," Harris explained. "Any idea who might have wanted to hurt your wife?" I thought of Jake, of his cold eyes and careful questions, of the way he'd disappeared from my life just as suddenly as he'd reappeared. "No," I answered. They verified my alibi within hours. Rodriguez and the other workers confirmed I'd been at the job site until after 10. Security cameras at the construction office showed my truck in the parking lot. Cell phone towers tracked my location. The timeline was airtight. I couldn't have been home when the murders occurred. But they weren't satisfied. "Did you hire anyone?" Bowen pressed. "Pay someone to do this?" "No," I replied firmly. Do you know anyone who might have done this as a favor to you? Harris asked. I thought of Jake's words, I owe your father. But Jake Thompson didn't exist in any database they could find. He had no address, no phone number, no social media presence. It was as if he'd vanished like smoke. No, I said again. They released me at dawn with instructions not to leave town. The crime scene tape was gone from my house, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Instead, I checked into a motel and slept for 14 hours straight. The investigation continued for weeks. They found no murder weapon, no fingerprints, no DNA evidence that led anywhere. David's family was devastated. He'd been a successful real estate agent with no known enemies. Jessica's family blamed me, of course, despite the airtight alibi. The case went cold within a month. I sold the house, quit my job, and moved to Denver to be closer to my brother. I started over with a new construction company, bought a small apartment, tried to build a different kind of life. Sometimes I'd find myself searching online for Jake Thompson, but there was never anything. No military records, no social media, no obituaries or address. Listings, he'd been my father's best friend for decades, but apparently he'd existed only in the shadows, only when needed. 6 months after the murders, I was drinking alone in a Denver bar when I raised my glass to the empty room and whispered, "Thank you." No one answered, but I knew somewhere out there Jake Thompson, or whoever he really was, had heard me. I never tried to find him. Some debts are paid in silence, and some ghosts are better left undisturbed. Jessica had been right about one thing. Every problem has a solution. She just hadn't expected the solution to come from a man who didn't officially exist, settling a debt to a dead friend by eliminating the people who had trapped his son in hell. The last thing I threw away before leaving Phoenix was the lingerie Jessica had bought for David. The tags were still attached. Some ghosts you don't question. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.